If you're an action game fan like me, then there's no doubt that you would have tried a Musou-style game like Dynasty Warriors, where you go around a large map and defeat hundreds if not thousands of enemies. I never had any Dynasty Warriors games specifically growing up, but I did have a copy of Sengoku Basara Samurai Heroes for the Wii. It's been so long since I last played this game, but I do have a lot of good memories playing it, and I always thought that characters like Masamune Date were really awesome, so he was my favourite character to play as. Fast forward to 2020, and I want you to imagine younger me sitting in my room on my brand new laptop trying to find a new fighting game to play. After searching for a while, I stumbled across a Japanese fighting game called Sengoku Basara X. I think I've heard that name somewhere before. Upon doing more research, I found that there was indeed a fighting game based on this game that I used to play all the time, and to make things better, X is an official collaboration between Arc System Works and Capcom. Fist of the North Star was also another Arc System Works PS2 collaboration fighting game, so if X is anything like that game, then this game is going to be mental. I only played Sengoku Basara X a little bit during lockdown, and I thought that now was a good time to revisit the game properly as I'm in the mood for a broken fighting game. From Dustloop Wiki flat out calling the game Kusoge, to Agiojo bringing a copy of the game to America for when he popped off when he won that Marvel 3 tournament, I knew that X was going to be something special, and that I had to learn it for this video. Sengoku Basara X is a Japanese exclusive fighting game, and as it's based on a series that never went mainstream, the game is very obscure, so finding information about its development and history is nearly impossible. Instead of doing the usual formula where I talk about a game's development and reception, let's go all in on X's gameplay and character roster specifically. Let's begin our deep dive into Sengoku Basara X. Before we start covering specific characters, let's go over the game's general mechanics. Also, please keep in mind that I'm not an expert at this game, and that I'm getting my information from the Dustloop wiki page for the game, which I highly recommend. For starters, Sengoku Basara X is a 4-button fighting game. You have light, medium, heavy, and reinforcements. This is your assist button, and there's a few things to cover here. Every character has their own assist character that cannot be switched out, and they're tied to the reinforcement meter. When you start a match, press the button to summon this horse animation, and when the horse reaches the end of the line, you can press the button again to call in your assist. After you use your assist, a cooldown period initiates where they cannot be called until it finishes, so you can't just spam them over and over. The cooldown length is determined by your reinforcement level, which is this number here. As you battle, this level will automatically increase, and it also changes how your assist functions. Your reinforcement level does not increase when your assist is on their way to battle, so if you call them in right at the start and your opponent doesn't, then they will have the lead. Reinforcements also don't have invincibility, so you can shut them down with good timing. I personally really like this system, and it reminds me a lot of Marvel vs. Capcom, which I'm also a big fan of. Having to wait for the assist to be ready while also having to juggle your reinforcement level on top of having to fight the opponent in real time can be a bit overwhelming, but I do enjoy the madness of it all. You can also use your reinforcements to burst out of a combo, or use them to get some extra damage during a super, so there's more to the reinforcement system than meets the eye. In terms of general movement, Basara X has the usual anime fighter repertoire. You can walk, backdash, run, jump, super jump, air dash, etc., so there are lots of ways to get around in this game. Even characters like Hideyoshi, who's a grappler, can do all of these to confirm into combos. I wonder if he's any good. The game also has Gatlings, which allow you to chain normals together, and these are great for starting combos. If your opponent likes to block low, and you take note of this, you can input forward and medium for a universal overhead to shatter their defense, or you can press forward and heavy for a proximity grab. If you couldn't tell by now, the Guilty Gear influence is strong with this one. Speaking of Guilty Gear, this following mechanic is like the dust system in that game, and it's one of my favorite systems here. If you press both medium and heavy, you can perform a blowback attack that sends the opponent flying towards the end of the screen. If you hold forward, you'll follow up with a homing dash that allows you to confirm into a combo. The combo routes you can perform after landing one of these depends on where you initiate it, but you can usually do a pretty stylish combo after landing a blowback. You can also charge this move up by holding down the buttons, and the opponent will stick to the wall if a blowback is performed this way. A similar mechanic can be done by pressing down and then pressing the two buttons, and this is called an aerial attack. These allow you to launch the opponent straight up into the air for a combo, and this is awesome. Going back to Hideyoshi for a moment, just because he's my favorite character to play as, he uses aerial attacks that allow me to easily combo into his anti-air grab, which either leads to more damage or godlike Oki. If you press down and heavy during one of these combos, then you can slam the enemy straight down as a satisfying combo ender. Finally, let's look at the meters on the bottom. The long one is called the Basara gauge, and this is your standard fighting game super meter. You gain meter by dealing or taking damage, and you use it to perform supers. The supers in this game are really cool looking, and it feels ridiculously satisfying to end a game with one. You can have up to 5 bars of meter at once, and they're represented by these glowing orbs. Speaking of orbs, let's explore the other meter, the Ichigeki gauge. I probably pronounced that wrong, I'm sorry. You fill this up by doing actions that give you skill points, such as landing a crouching hit, performing combos, etc. And when this meter is filled up all the way, you can perform an Arc System Works staple, instant kills. These aren't that hard to combo into, and I very quickly found that Hideyoshi's anti-air grab guarantees an instant kill, and this works from anywhere on the screen. I'm going to be going in order from right to left, low tier to high tier from the Dustloop tier list for the game and explaining each character's abilities and all of their breakdowns. Again, I'm not an expert, so I may miss out on some stuff, and if you think I do miss out on anything, please leave a comment explaining what you think is important. Alright, let's get into it. First appearing in Sengoku Basara 2 on the PS2, Keiji Maeda is defined by his carefree nature and tendency to pull pranks on his uncle Toshie. In Sengoku Basara Cross, however, he's one of the worst characters in the whole game. Although Keiji's crouching light is good for stagger pressure, as well as him having the ability to perform infinite combos from his guard cancel, he lacks anything amazing that sets him apart from the rest of the character roster. One of Keiji's most obvious weaknesses is his lack of a forward dash. Instead, he has a step dash, and his mobility overall isn't the best. His moves tend to be a bit on the slower end of things, with moves like standing heavy, crouching heavy, and his down medium air command normal having very long startup times. His Yoko Renbo special is good for punishing the enemy when they're super unsafe, as it has 31 frames of startup, and this goes to around 93 frames when you charge the move up. Koi no Togegoe also has 37 frames of startup, and when looking through his move list, I found that a lot of his specials overall have over 30 startup frames. His faster special is Koi no Sayaate, a command grab with 5 frames of startup. This move can be used to start combos, but the range isn't amazing, and characters like Hideyoshi also have command grabs, but his starts in only 3 frames. In terms of system mechanics, his blowback attack lets him start combos, including infinites, and as for his aerial attack, Dustloop Wiki literally says that you don't use these moves, so I'm assuming these aren't a big part of his game plan. His reinforcement lets him summon these moles that get placed along the ground, and you get extra moles added depending on your reinforcement level. These are used in his infinites, and his crouching reinforcement as well isn't bad, but it doesn't go as far as the other character's crouching reinforcement, so it's not amazing. Now, I know that some of you may be thinking, if Keiji has the ability to go into infinite combos and he can combo into his instant kill, then he can't be that bad, right? The thing with Sengoku Basara Cross is that most, if not all characters in the game can also do these things. This whole game is busted when you start playing it properly and doing advanced combos and setup, so these don't set Keiji apart from anyone else. Dustloop Wiki even goes as far as to state, Maeda's biggest problem is that he is too basic with no overwhelming strengths. So even though his damage output and range aren't that bad, they don't really help to mitigate the glaring issues in his toolkit. I don't think he's a bad beginner character if you're totally new to the game and just want to play casually with friends, but if you're committed to properly learning this game and playing with other people who also know how to play, then there's little reason to go with poor Keiji. It's a big shame, because while I do think that Keiji looks really cool and I love his massive weapon, he gets an A+ in the style department, but overall he fails the whole test. If you thought Keiji was bad, get ready for Masamune Date. I was so excited to try him out when I first started playing this game, and while I do think he's good fun in a casual setting, reading this passage from Dustloop almost made me shudder with fear. The only pro they list about Date is that he looks cool and that people will like you for picking an ultra low tier, but that's literally it. The biggest problem with Date, as far as I know, is that other characters can do everything he does, but they can do it way better. One of his biggest weaknesses is that he has a large hurt box. There are certain combos that only work on him as a result, including infinites, and Dustloop also reports that Hideyoshi, for example, is able to exploit the crap out of this. A grappler with a full screen grab that can start a combo is good against the character with a large hurt box and a DP that's minus on hit? Say it ain't so! And I hope you caught that last part, because yeah, his DP is minus on hit. Deathbite, which is one of the coolest DP names I've ever heard, also lacks invincibility on Date's head on the first couple of frames, meaning that some jump-in attacks will beat this move clean. You can also charge this move up for more hits, but it's still minus on hit when charged, and if you charge it up all the way, it ends up becoming minus 56 on block. His blowback and aerial attacks aren't bad, and while the former is mostly used for infinites, the latter is used for combos. However, both of these moves will whiff on Oichi when you do them up close, so you can't use them at this range at all on her. I don't know why this happens, maybe she's really small, or I don't know, Date just sucks. His reinforcement is a decent poke in neutral, and it does become better when leveled up, so you mainly want to use it for big combos. His crouching reinforcement is also pretty mediocre, as it doesn't have any special properties that allow it to stand out when you compare it to other reinforcements in the game. In terms of his other moves, Dustloop says that Hell Dragon, his full screen fireball super, is his only good move, and I think I see why. It's only 4 frames slower than his crouching light, for example. Speaking of fast moves, Date's throw has 5 frames of startup, and it can also lead to really funny stuff like this. Finally, Dustloop also reports that in addition to Date being very weak, he's also very hard. He's not a good beginner character, as he takes lots of game knowledge and lacks anything amazing that he can throw out at any given time that can benefit a new player. His combos do look pretty cool, but in terms of viability, they're just the complete opposite, they suck. To sum up, Date Masamune is a jack of no trades and a master of sucking. I can't believe that's a real sentence. As the younger sister of Nobunaga Oda, Oichi is from a very prestigious family, and she's also a very desolate person. In Sengoku Basara X, Oichi not only carries these traits into battle personality-wise, but she's also very scary at times in the sense of gameplay, because she boasts the highest damage output in the whole game. This is due to her Shadow Hand stance that lets her debuff the enemy, but let's not get ahead of ourselves here. When you're in normal mode, Oichi's combos are very limited when you compare them to the other characters' combos, and they also change when you're in the stance. Her infinites are also very hard, not just in terms of execution, but because they're also character and location specific. Trying to pull one of these off successfully in a real match takes lots of general game and character knowledge, so Oichi is the furthest thing away from a pick up and play character. She also has some nice normals like a standing low, a one button anti-air, and crouching normals that can be used in her main combo routes. She also has multiple reinforcement attack types, including a full screen projectile, a boomerang, a stationary projectile, and an anti-air. When it comes to special moves, Oichi has a wind move that is fantastic as an anti-zoning tool as it can reflect projectiles, a movement tool, and a parry. Just like in Third Strike, pressing forward to catch a high or mid or down to catch a low attack will parry the enemy's strike. Finally, she has an invincible DP that allows her to go into her stance. When Oichi is in this stance, she changes almost completely and she becomes very scary. Pretty much all of her normals change, and Oku is perhaps the best special move when in Shadow Hand mode. There are 3 versions of this move, and you can cancel them into each other, with this being an infinite block string on big characters like Masamune and Hideyoshi. Perhaps the most important aspect of the stance are Oichi's debuffs. There are 9 in total, and they range from stealing life to doing chip damage on her normals to halving the opponent's damage output, etc. And if you manage to land this super, all 9 debuffs are applied at once, which is nuts. To make matters worse if you're fighting Oichi, she also has an invincible reversal super, so you can never be truly safe when trying to pressure with your normals. For a new player, Oichi is very overwhelming, as not only do you have to learn her in normal mode, but also in Shadow Hand mode, and not only that, you also have to learn how to effectively switch between the 2 modes when the opportunity arises. On top of this, she also has very low health, taking around 35% more damage than the average character, so trying to properly learn Oichi is a big undertaking. I personally love how technical she is, and I think her debuff system is awesome as they're all random. You can never know which debuff will take effect at any given time, leading to many surprising moments in the heat of battle. Oda Nobunaga, one of the most famous figures in Japanese history, is, of course, playable in the Sengoku Basara series, and like Oichi, he too has a unique gimmick in Cross. Nobunaga is defined by his Souls mechanic, and according to Dustloop, Nobunaga gets souls by doing 214C, hitting the opponent during 214C, and landing 214-214C, and he can have up to 3 souls. If Nobunaga has at least 1 soul, he is able to dash cancel, air dash cancel, jump cancel, and super jump cancel all of his normals, exception being his A normal, 6B, and 6C, on hit or block for as long as he has them. He is also able to spend his souls on certain special moves, and some of them change depending on how many souls he has. If the opponent hits Nobunaga, or if 708 frames pass, Nobunaga's souls will attack Nobunaga, dealing damage. Nobunaga's souls all have separate timers on when they rebel, depending on when you get them. Nobunaga is able to block his own souls attacking him. They deal 44 damage, are mids, and a level 2. Having souls be purely an offensive mechanic that helps you would be cool enough, but having the souls rebel and start to attack you after a period of time, while it might be a bit annoying in the heat of battle, it's a great idea thematically speaking. Nobunaga, like Masamune Date, is also pretty big, and this means that certain character-specific infinites will work on him, and his execution requirements can also get you killed, because if you do drop a combo, his souls will tear into him. Perhaps his most important move is Dokuku Suru Tamashi, because if you perform this move and get away with it, Nobunaga gains access to meterless infinites. This move also has a unique gimmick, and to expand on the quote from before, when you do 2-1C, you gain 1 soul, and a timer activates which is seen under your reinforcement gauge. 2-1-4C can't be activated again when the timer is active. During this timer, whenever you hit the opponent with normals or special moves, including moves that cost souls, you gain souls and you can have up to 3. If you have no souls, you must do 40 damage. If you have 1 soul, you must do 60, and if you have 2 souls, you must do 80 damage. This damage is added up during combos. Yeah, it's definitely safe to say that Nobunaga's soul mechanic is the most important part of his toolkit. He also has some really cool moves, including a shotgun blast that can be infused with souls to keep it going, a large projectile that uses all your souls, and an upward sword projectile, and a move that lets him act out of block stun if he presses the same button that his opponent presses. He also has a super that summons a poison cloud, dealing passive damage to the enemy should they be near him, and he also has an instant kill that involves him shooting a full screen laser beam while sitting on a throne of skulls. That's hardcore. Like Oichi, Nobunaga is a technical character that requires mastery of a character-specific mechanic in order to be played optimally. I really love his animations, his character designs, and everything about him, especially the soul system. It's really unique, but to be honest, I definitely don't have the brainpower to pilot a character like this. Kenshin is a warrior who uses a variety of ice-related attacks, and his biggest rival is Shingen Takeda in the first Sengoku Basara game. In Sengoku Basara Cross, Kenshin is defined by two major tools: freezing the opponent and countering the opponent. When Kenshin hits the opponent with certain moves, like this projectile for example, they enter a freeze state. This slows down their buttons and it lasts for 8 seconds. Although Kenshin's Gatlings are very limited, which hurts his combo potential, finding ways to freeze the opponent is a crucial part of his game plan, as you really want to apply this debuff every chance you get. The other major aspect of Kenshin's toolkit are his counters. He can perform these with a backwards DP motion and then light to counter highs and mids, or medium to counter lows, but this counter move is rarely used because his other counters are way better. If you do a quarter circle back motion, this move sends you forward, and it also fires an unblockable projectile that freezes the opponent if it connects. If this move lands, Kenshin becomes faster than usual, and this is active until the enemy hits the ground or until you do 5 moves. You can also ground dash, air dash, jump, and super jump cancel your moves, and they also have more hit stun. However, this move is truly amazing because for some reason your taunt is also affected, but instead of only being able to do this move 5 times, you can do it up to 30 times. Looping this move over and over and then going into an aerial attack is a really consistent way to set up Kenshin's infinites, and this doesn't require any meter at all. When you combine this with freeze making your opponent's moves slower to come out, it makes getting counters even easier, and if they get predictable with something like constant air dash buttons for pressure for example, you know what to do. Speaking of counters, Kenshin also has a counter super that only has 1 frame of startup, and not only that, it also freezes the opponent. If you couldn't tell by now, Kenshin is a character defined by reads and reactions. If you're a beast at knowing when and where the enemy will attack, his counters will quickly put you in a very advantageous position, especially if you can land one right after the other. But if you're not good at getting reads and reactions out consistently, and you're a new player as well, you might think that Kenshin is pretty unfulfilling to play. Kenshin is pretty tricky for new players to pick up in my opinion, and this is because he doesn't have many gimmicks that can completely turn the tide of a battle. But if you have solid fundamentals, reads, and timing, you can really put in work with Kenshin. Based on the real member of the Tokugawa 4 Heavenly Kings, Honda Tadakatsu was a beast of a man, and it's reported that he never suffered a single injury, even after being involved with 57 military campaigns. In Sengoku Basara X, however, he's a massive character with lots of tools that let him rush the enemy down, because despite his size, he's amazing at rushdown. He's also a character of extremes, according to Dustloop, and despite his monstrous offensive potential, he struggles on defense as his big buttons are quite slow to start up. There are also 2 mechanics that are specific to Tadakatsu, and they are the boost gauge and kidnapping. The former is this meter down here, and it gets used whenever you dash, air dash, or use certain special moves. If you run out of boost meter, Tadakatsu overheats and you can't recover this meter for a bit. You can recover it faster if your reinforcement, Ieyasu, is on the screen, but he'll get kidnapped by ninjas every 20 seconds. You can hit them out of the way to prevent this, but if you fail, you're locked out of all Ieyasu related moves for 20 seconds. In terms of normals, Tadakatsu is quite slow, but his range makes up for this. Standing light, for example, is a massive button that can be used from a distance, and his standing medium hits twice, with the second hit being a low. If you cancel the first hit into flight mode, you can do an overhead, creating a high-low mix-up. Tadakatsu is all about these mix-ups, and he would be considerably worse if not for flight mode and the offensive opportunities it creates. Also, another thing that benefits Tadakatsu, and to a great extent I might add, are his glitches, because he has a lot of them. From his guard point glitch that lets him get permanent guard point for the whole match, a double shot on his projectiles, and a way to be in flight mode and on the ground at the same time, Tadakatsu can exploit a lot of quirks in the game's code to his advantage, and he can even leave the planet. Some of these glitches require precise execution, and some are more useful than others, but it's true that in order to achieve true mastery of Tadakatsu, you've got to learn some of these glitches, at least the important ones. Tadakatsu's biggest weakness, in my opinion, are his lackluster defensive options. I already said before that his normals are too slow to be used as reversals, and this also applies to his supers. At their fastest, these will come out in 14 frames with another 18 added after the super flash, so they aren't that fast. Before we wrap up, I will also add that his instant kill is possibly the best one in the whole game, as it's really fast and it goes full screen, so you definitely want to use this move whenever the opportunity arises. Tadakatsu is also one of my favorite Sengoku Basara characters in general, because he looks super sick and I love how big he is, so having him be playable in a fighting game is, oh dude, it's a dream come true, it's awesome. As a treasure-loving pirate, Motochika Chosokabe is all about the money, and he reminds me a bit of Wario in this regard. In a really cool move, his obsession with treasure makes it into Cross as part of his toolkit, but let's get into that a bit later. For starters, Motochika has amazing mobility. With 2 air dashes and his Dokyu special move, this guy controls the skies without breaking a sweat. He also has some really nice perks with standing heavy, jumping medium, crouching medium, and light DP. His reinforcements are also quite strong, with him having access to a lot of them, and his damage is also on the higher end too. Dustloop says that his only major weakness is a lack of mix-ups, but with everything else in his toolkit being as strong and effective as it is, I think this is okay. Motochika's unique character gimmick is money, and I'll let Dustloop explain this system. Money is a unique resource used to summon reinforcements. Motochika starts the match with 1000 Ryo, and he can hold up to 9,999. The main way to earn money is by hitting the opponent with specific moves. There is a hidden modifier for gaining money which ranges between 0 and 10, and it will increase when the opponent is blocking or getting hit, and decrease if Motochika is the one doing that. Another way is by destroying chests. A parrot appears every 15 to 20 seconds, and it starts following Motochika, and after some time, it drops a chest containing 1000 Ryo. In each following chest, the money inside will increase by 1000 up to 5000, but if the opponent hits the parrot, it will be blown away and the amount of money in the next chest resets back to 1000. Opponents can also deny the money by destroying the chest first. The amount of money you have determines which reinforcement you can summon too, and they're Neoguruma, Moki, and Meki. What I also like about the mech system is that if you perform down down and press reinforcement, you can self-destruct your mech and get a full refund on all the money that you spent. Motochika's normals are also a bit on the slower side, with buttons like standing medium, standing heavy, and crouching light having 10, 15, and 12 startup frames respectively. If you do manage to land these however, you can go into high damage combos and also get some nice money in the process. If you're playing Motochika, you have to be all about the money, meaning that your entire game plan has to revolve wholly around this whole system. Optimizing combos and setups to drain your opponent off their last dollar is crucial, and if you fail to get lots of money, you may just end up losing the whole match. Motochika's combos also revolve around what are called summer loops, and Dustloop even says that if you can't do these, then you should play someone else. These combos are very technical, and they often involve precise just frame inputs, so you have to practice these consistently. Going back to his DP special for a moment, this move has follow-ups that you can do in order to not only remain nimble but also to keep the pressure going. If you hit 623 BB at a certain height, you can cancel it into certain air movement options such as your double jump and your 2 air dashes, and you can go into your super double jump regardless of height. If you do 623 AB, you can't go into any air options except for your super double jump. If you super double jump cancel then immediately do an air normal, then you will fall down to the ground very quickly. The air normal you should do is jumping heavy, because of the long startup it has, which means you can go to the ground without hitting the opponent, which would ruin the combo otherwise. This is what makes your summer loops work, and it's vital to every aspect of Motochika's combos. If that makes perfect 100% sense to you, then give Motochika a shot, I reckon you might like him. In a game filled with advanced combos, precise execution, and tricky infinites, Sanada Yukimura is quite good for beginners, as his pick-up-and-play nature allows new players to understand the game quite well, and to top it all off, he's actually a pretty good character in his own right. Dustloop reports that Yukimura is quite good at pretty much everything, although he does struggle a bit when he has to deal with zoning. He can get in really well with the fastest run in the game, his normals all have great range and they can easily confirm into combos, and he's very strong in neutral with his strong poking tools. Also, his DP is invincible from frame 1, so if that doesn't tell you that this guy is strong, then I don't know what will. Yukimura is a Rekka character, and as the second hit of his Rekka string is a low attack, this is a good knowledge check against those unfamiliar with the matchup. You can also confirm the final hit into an infinite if you have level 51 or higher reinforcements, and the move itself can also be performed independently with a DP motion. He can also throw in an overhead after the first hit of the Rekka, and this can also be performed independently as a combo starter. He also has a super that, like his DP, is also invincible on frame 1, and he also has a fireball super that goes full screen. To be honest with you, this guy is one of my favorite characters to play as in the whole game. His easy to remember move list isn't that overwhelming, and you don't have to learn a character specific gimmick or major glitch that can be exploited, so he's quite approachable. When I was playing as Yukimura for the first time before I started working on this video, he reminded me a lot of Narukami from Persona 4 Arena Ultimax, and lo and behold, the man himself is mentioned in Yukimura's Dust Loop page. Yukimura also has plenty of infinites and tech involving his reinforcement, so it's not like he has no skill ceiling. Don't let his ease of use fool you, because Yukimura still has a large number of things to learn if you want to get serious with a character, including, for example, when and how to confirm into certain infinites depending on where you are on the screen. There's also not anything that's really bad about him either. I said before that he struggles a bit with zoning, but he has a fast run, and his Fireball Super from earlier can help him deal with zoning, so he's not completely useless here. Overall, Yukimura is a really solid character when played at all skill levels, and I highly recommend him. If you're a fan of big characters who can put the opponent into a world of hurt with nothing but their bare hands, then Toyotomi Hideyoshi is the guy for you, and he's who I like to play as the most. Hideyoshi is the grappler of the game, and wait, a fighting game where the grappler is top tier? What? Yeah, that's right. Hideyoshi has amazing damage, a full screen command grab, a close range command grab that only has 3 startup frames, and a godlike anti-air that keeps the enemy stuck in place, so overall we have a really scary character on our hands. Speaking of his anti-air, this allows you to perform combos from pretty much anywhere on the screen. He also has a command grab super that comes out in 1 frame, and it forces the opponent into a minigame of sorts that's like Faust minigame super in Guilty Gear. If you manage to connect fully, you can get some really nice damage, and if you input it with your reinforcement, this also becomes safe on block. His other super, which also comes out in 1 frame mind you, can be mashed out off when it's not done in the corner, but if you do it in the corner, this move is impossible to escape, so it's really good to use here. His blowback and aerial attacks are also used for infinites, and on counter hit you can combo this into his anti-air grab. I showed this combo off before without a counter hit, but that was just for demonstrative purposes, so now you can see the true combo. Speaking of combos, you can also do his jumping heavy and combo it naturally into his command grab, which is done with a simple quarter cycle back input. He also has solid anti-airs in the form of standing light and standing medium, and on top of this, Hideyoshi takes 20% less damage than usual. If you're used to the phrase grapplers can never be top tier, then think again, because Hideyoshi can slam dunk that into the ground. Hideyoshi also has a lot of character specific combos, and these are crucial for winning a match, especially at high level. Knowing which combos will work on each character is very important, and a general rule of thumb that I've thought of is that the bigger the character, the more stuff you can get away with. Tadakatsu, for example, is able to be hit by Hideyoshi's anti-air after his crouching heavy, and this only works on him. If you're a grappler fan like me, then definitely try Hideyoshi out, because Arc System Works made sure that us grappler fans were eating good with Hideyoshi. Before we go any further, I just want to tell you the following. The only weaknesses that Dustloop lists for Motonari is that he is banned in netplay tournaments that the SB Cross Discord server runs, and that he looks stupid, but that's it. Motonari has the best reinforcement in the game, the best super in the game, and his bread and butter combos are also a series of attacks that are inescapable and unblockable. Motonari's gimmick is that he can hit his own reinforcements, and this may sound bad, but it's actually amazing for 2 reasons. Firstly, Motonari gains meter every time either he or his opponent makes contact with them, and secondly, the opponent cannot hit the reinforcement back at Motonari. In terms of normals, he also has a fast jab that can go into infinites, a quick poke that also starts combos, a fast anti-air, solo jump-ins, a combo starting overhead, and potentially the best blowback attack in the whole game. This move can link into standing medium without a charge or a wall bounce, and it also has amazing range. Motonari's reinforcement is arguably the best move in the whole game, as you can press the button the moment that there's a gap in your opponent's attacks to immediately interrupt their block string. He also has a DP that can combo into itself for massive damage when at level 100, a ranged strike that, according to Dustloop, makes the opponent piss themselves, and a smoke trap that he can teleport to instantly. This teleport is fully invincible on frame 1, and you can also call a reinforcement when teleporting, so it's pretty much impossible to punish this. You can throw these rings out normally or charge them, and they can be shot out at a variety of different angles depending on how you input this move. These rings don't hit the enemy independently, instead you have to hit the opponent into the ring where it will launch them into the air. If Motonari gets hit, the rings stay active, so that's fantastic for him. You can also use these rings all the time in both combos and neutral, and if you knock the opponent down, you can perform Oki with one of the most busted moves I think I've seen in the whole game. By performing quarter circle back and then pressing any of the attack buttons, you can set a trap along the ground, and you can have 3 of them on screen at once. What makes this move really broken though is that if you input this again, the traps explode, and their explosions are completely unblockable. You can throw out a normal to make them block and then detonate it, opening them up to even more damage, and if they decide to throw out an invincible reversal, you can always bait it and block, allowing you to punish them after waiting. On top of having the best specials in the game, Motonari also has the best supers. This one spawns a giant ring that hits the opponent lots of times, but it also debuffs them in 2 ways. It seals away their reinforcements, and it also makes his special move rings hit independently, so you don't have to knock the opponent into them anymore. You can also do unblockable loops or infinite combos from this move, and it's really not that hard to start up from this. On top of this, Modenari also has an invincible reversal super. Now, you may be thinking, surely every single Sengoku Basara X player on God's green earth would be exploiting the hell out of this character, right? I mean, there's no reason not to pick him. But there are actually less Modenari players than you might think, and I'll let Dustloop explain why this is the case. Now, after reading Modenari's page, some of you may be wondering why he isn't banned in Japanese arcades, as usually characters with looping inescapable unblockable setups are banned in tournaments. This is because, surprisingly, not that many people play as him in Japanese arcades. This is because most players cannot handle the pressure of playing as Modenari, because losing as it would be very embarrassing. Because not many people play as him, he is allowed in Japanese arcades. If you think about it, Modenari is sort of like a reverse joke character, because while characters like Dan Hibiki or Surfbot put pressure on the person fighting against them to win, Modenari puts pressure on the person playing as him. Labbing Modenari is really good fun, and while he isn't banned, I can only imagine the amount of stabbings this character would have caused had he been around in 90s American arcades. Normally, Modenari would have been the final character, but the PS2 port of Sengoku Basara X contains 2 bonus characters, so let's cover them. Karakura Kojuro is a very aggressive fighter with a focus on rushdown, although he doesn't have amazing mobility. He has an invincible DP, very strong close range pressure with this move that can be made plus 12 on block with stance cancels, and this string right here will force a guard break if they block the first hit and you time it correctly. His gimmick is called Narukami mode, and it's activated after he lands this super. For the next 5 seconds, Kojuro can cancel moves into other moves like specials into specials and normals into normals, and hell, you can even cancel a move into itself over and over again if you really want to. He also has a stance called Suigetsu no Kamae, and this lets him perform a dash. You can leave it by inputting the move again, jumping, or blocking, and on its own, this move isn't amazing. You mainly use this stance to keep applying pressure to the enemy when up close after certain moves, and for that purpose it's quite good. He can do this move, Ichi no Sen, either in or out of the stance, and if you stance cancel it, this move becomes plus 12 on block. He also has a full screen super that's good for dealing with zoning, and a close range super that can do some nice damage, especially if you do the reinforcement version. Kojuro is stupid good when up close and pressuring, but when he's at a distance he struggles a lot, especially when he has to deal with heavy zoning. As the final character, Takanaka Hanbei is certainly very interesting, and hovering over his portrait on Dustloop Wiki makes the word cringe appear on screen. According to them, this guy is the ultimate glass cannon character, as while he has great pokes and can go into infinite combos that don't require any meter, he also takes 50% more damage than average, so characters like Hideyoshi can maul him if he makes a single mistake. His character gimmick, Emblem, allows him to survive for longer, however. He can have up to 2 emblems at a time, and if he is counter hit during certain special moves, Hanbei can spend one of his emblems to send the enemy flying back to where they came from. However, activating this move will damage Hanbei, and it has 93 frames of recovery, so good luck ever doing this in a real match without getting hit. His standing reinforcement will either reflect projectiles from a distance or send the enemy flying away when done up close, and his crouching reinforcement is a standard anti-air that's used in infinites against certain characters. Hanbei also has a lot of special moves, including a fast poke that is very hard to punish, an anti-air and launching tool that allows him to slide under certain attacks, and a parry that allows him to catch highs, mids, or lows. His supers are also just okay, I guess, and while some of them can be used in infinites, this is quite a common phenomenon in SP Cross, so it doesn't really make him unique. Although I will say that I find it really interesting that his instant kill is the only one that can be performed in the air, and if you land this during an air combo, it looks really cool, and it's really easy to combo into this too. Hanbei seems like a character for masochists, as while he doesn't have anything amazing or super unique aside from the air instant kill, he takes a crap ton of damage for making very simple mistakes, so I feel like in order to willingly main this character and properly play as him, you have to hate yourself on some level. Whew, that was a lot. Okay, I went into this video knowing next to nothing about Sengoku Basara X, and now I have a much greater appreciation for the game. I'm a big fan of jank, busted, and just Kusoge fighting games, so this game right here is right up my alley, and I really enjoyed my time with it. Again, I'm not an expert, far from it, and there's still a lot for me to learn, but I've been wanting to cover this game for a while now. I never thought my video about the game would be this long, but I had a lot of fun making it, so if you made it all the way to the end, let me know if you've ever played this game before. I really hope that the Sengoku Basara series can make a grand return one day on modern systems and PC, as I really miss these games, and I'm tempted to go back and play the other games in the series that I haven't touched yet. Okay, thanks for watching, I hope you had fun, and I'll see you in the next one.